Welcome my dear friends, today we discuss this document written by R.P.Saraf, founder of Nature Human-Centric People's Movement. The title is Still an Inequalitarian and Irrational World. Human society is just on the threshold of the 21st century. This century is expected to be a great turning point in human history. Because the unprecedented development of science, technology and sociology by man in the past 100 years has opened new vistas of social progress. New visions of nature and man. It is this new perception of reality that has been fastly replacing the millennia-old human beliefs about nature and man by new visions. For instance, the ecological knowledge teaches us that nature is not to be conquered, as stressed by Marxism and liberalism, but rather preserved and promoted. It informs us that human greed to abuse and misuse the natural phenomena brings forth pollution and poisoning of environmental resources, that is, air, water and land, which has already put our planet in trouble and can in time result in human destruction and also the ruination of all bio-life on this planet. It teaches us to always balance human needs with natural preservation and uphold the coexistence of different types of phenomena. The knowledge of space teaches us that the people everywhere are faced with similar and common problems and thus have identical concerns. It gives us the vision of global humanism, which demands of us to adopt a rational humanist approach as the ordering principle of human society. The theory of relativity shows us the interrelationship between matter, energy, space and time. It tells us that matter and energy are interchangeable and space and time are not absolute. It demolishes the theory of social absolutism, pointing out that social truths, like natural laws, are relative and partial. The mechanics of quanta shows that both light and matter have wave and corpuscular properties which coexist together in each of them. They do not obey deterministic laws of motion as they would in classical mechanics. It shatters the theory of social determinism or the concept of historical inevitability, showing that every developing process is marked by certain probabilities, any of which may, corresponding to the changing balance of forces, outpace the others. The science of micro-world gives us the knowledge of the fundamental constituents of matter and energy. The bioscience shows us the genetic characteristic of life, a discovery leading to effective changes in the treatment of many diseases. The materials science tells us the specific properties of various material phenomena. All these sciences reveal that there is no unbridgeable dividing line between inorganic and organic processes. The whole series of technologies extend the faculties of our sense organs, helping them to perceive reality in a more concrete form, on the one hand, and provide us more effective ways to deal with them accurately and precisely, on the other. All this varied knowledge of the different processes of reality demands appropriate changes in our ways of imagination, thinking, analyzing, saying, doing and organizing different processes. Without such changes, a full utilization of the new knowledge is not possible. 10. Essentially, it requires a two-sided fundamental social transformation, that is, a new harmony between nature and human society, on the one hand, and a new harmony between society and its member and between one person and another. Without establishing this two-sided harmony, human existence today cannot be ensured. However, the establishment of a two-sided harmony is not an easy job, because such a basic change involves the replacement of the old norms of disharmony by the new harmonious ones. The principles of disharmony were based on one-sided domination, that of society over nature, that of society over its member or vice versa, in case of despotic social heads who ride roughshod over the collective, and that of strong person over the weak one. The one-sided domination of society over nature was due to human ignorance and greed, while all forms of social domination were based on the supremacy of the powerful, moneyed and privileged over the weak, poor and deprived. The process of the establishment of two-sided harmony is interrelated. Unless there is simultaneous harmony in society, nature-society harmony cannot take shape. But the question of establishing harmony in society is basically a question of transforming the present unfair and unjust system into a fair and just one. Naturally, such a fundamental change demands an all-sided transformation in human approach, style and organization. Serious challenges and dangerous threats. At a time when society needs immediate appropriate changes in its relations with nature and also within itself, it is confronted by numerous serious challenges and two very dangerous strategic threats, affecting in one way or the other the series of events occurring in various parts of the world. The first serious challenge is the growth of minority struggles in the form of either ethnic or religious uprisings against the dominant majorities. According to a 1993 estimate, nearly 73 countries are affected by such confrontations. Another estimate says that of the post-1992 conflicts in the world, only 3 were between two countries while all the remaining 79 are being fought within various countries. Most of these minority struggles have been confined to the developing countries. As the 1991 UNDP report noted, there have been over 120 conflicts in the Third World since 1945, with 20 million deaths. More than in the Second World War. In the ongoing civil conflicts, human society has been suffering devastating effects with 1 million dead in Sudan, 500,000 in Somalia, 500,000 in Afghanistan, 200,000 in Bosnia, etc. Still, there seems no immediate possibility of bringing this lengthy bloody process to a final close. The second serious challenge is that, in the post-Cold War period, the bipolar superpower contention has been replaced by a simmering competition for supremacy between the 5 big powers: US, Russia, China, European Union and Japan, having divergent positions on a wide range of issues to further their respective national interests. The most significant example of this competition has been the Sino-US controversy over the question of human rights in China, mutual trade problems, Peking's nuclear tests, etc. This controversy has become further inflated by the Taiwanese president's visit to the US and US citizen Harry Wu's detention in China. The continuing Washington-Tokyo trade dispute is another example. The Washington-Paris tension over latter's trade with Iran, French nuclear tests and American video films. The U.S. threat to European Union to impose $1 billion in trade sanctions if the European Union does not eliminate the quotas which U.S. says are unfair to its banana companies. The Washington-Moscow differences over nuclear matters, Bosnia and Chechnya, the US-EU different positions on many European issues, Moscow-Tokyo differences over Kuril Islands, China-ASEAN controversy over bring about a complex world picture. In all high-power estrangements, the US stands as the principal party and indeed the biggest one among the Big Five. With every party trying to maximize its self-interests, there seems the possibility of an increase in the big power tension. The third serious challenge is the economic downswing of the Western liberal model. This is evident from the stagnating meager growth rate and the high unemployment rate prevailing in all the OECD countries, except Japan, for the past 15 years. But, since 3 years, Japan too has entered this downturn phase. The unemployment in Europe as a whole is as much as 11.8%, and in the OECD countries about 8.5% of the workforce is out of work. The economic downswing has, in turn, led to increase in crime. The persisting economic deterioration in the developed countries is contrasted by the steady thriving East and Southeast Asian economies which have been enjoying an average annual growth rate of 7% for the past 1.5 decades. The traditional Western economies proposition, upholding West as the engine of world economic growth, seems to have become inoperative because of its growing ineffectiveness not only in the developed countries but also in many Western-oriented African and Latin American economies, and more importantly, because of the rise of a new East and Southeast Asian, functional model, blending the market and the state interventions together. The fourth serious challenge is the growing inequality and poverty in the world. The recently released World Development Report, 1995, says, corporate executives earn at least 149 times more than the factory worker, and the world's 358 billionaires have a combined net worth equal to that of 45% of the world's population. In 1993, some 2 billion people, well over half of the world's working-age population, lived in low-income economies and had an annual per capita income below $695, and about 1/3 of the working-age population unemployed. According to the Food and Agriculture Organization (FAO), hunger and malnutrition remain the most devastating problems facing the people of the world. The 1995 FAO report says, about 20% of the developing world population, that is, about 780 million people, have insufficient food intake, and over 192 million children are suffering from protein-energy malnutrition. Despite the growing demand for the eradication of world poverty in various international enclaves, the possibility of any concrete action in this regard does not look very promising due to various existing economic and political distortions in the world and the quite different priorities. Unrelated to the issue of poverty eradication, of the ruling circles in various countries, the fifth serious challenge is the emergence of international gangs of criminals. The 1994 UNDP report shows that such gangs now control about $1 trillion of world trade that included drug and arms trade and gold smuggling. The number one dangerous strategic threat is environmental degradation. It has been mainly caused by the overproduction of the greenhouse gases, which are resulting in the depletion of the ozone layer on the one hand, and an increase in global warming, on the other. The depletion of the ozone layer is causing serious human ailments and having bad effects on other biospecies by producing genetic changes, while the increase in greenhouse gases, by trapping the sun's heat, is adversely affecting our climate, bringing in changes in the pattern of seasons, food chain, melting of snows, rising of sea levels, acid rains, etc. If the current environmental degradation rate continues, our planet, according to experts, will become uninhabitable for biospecies in about 100 years. The number 2 dangerous strategic threat is the population explosion. During the past 200 years, the world population had increased 5 times. It is now reaching near the figure of 6 billion, with a growth rate of 100 million per year. Very soon, our world population is going to outstrip the carrying capacity of our planet. Due to the growing population's encroachment on natural resources, the Earth is losing 25 billion tons of its topsoil and 17 million hectares of tropical forests every year. Nearly 70% of the world's forests have already been cleared. Due to the shrinking of forests cover, many species of birds and animals have either become extinct or less in number. All the above-mentioned immediate serious challenges and destructive strategic threats reflect disharmonies within human society and between the latter and the nature. Essentially, they show the imbalanced state of human society. This state of affairs demands that the human community, both collectively as well as nation-wise, makes a determined effort to set things right. But nothing of this sort has since attained priority in the global agenda nor become the passionate concern for any country. A world of dog eat dog. Why is the human society so unconcerned about such life and death questions? The reason is multidimensional. But the most important one is that we are still living under an unfair and unjust social order where big fish eats the small one and where might, money and privilege constitute the accepted norms of justice and truth, both in the world as a whole as well as in each country. On the world scale, the existing social reality is explained by the fact that when every international forum, country and individual accepts universal franchise, that is, one entity, one vote as the basic principle of the rule of law, the highest world body, the UN, is regulated and dominated by the military-based 5 veto-holding big powers who have reduced the role of the remaining 180 UN members to nullity. Similarly, the 2 international financial institutions, the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, have been the financial fiefdoms of a few rich countries who hold the weightage due to the donor-related voting principle operating in these institutions. More, the recently endorsed Non-Proliferation Treaty by nearly 180 countries gives virtual monopoly of nuclear weapons to 5 big nuclear powers who are, instead of proceeding towards the total elimination of these deadly weapons, conducting new experiments to improve the destructive capacity of this weapon. Further, a handful of the developed countries, with 1/4 of the world population, consume 80% of the world resources, leaving the remaining 20% for 3/4 of the world population living in over 125 developing countries. Furthermore, 1/2 of the world population, constituting the female part of the human community, continues to be the victim of ill treatment and misbehavior. On the country level, the situation is not very much different from the prevailing international order. Despite variations among the 185 countries due to the different physical settings, historical backgrounds and socio-economic conditions, there is a great deal of similarity in the quality of social life in many countries. The political process in almost every country, whether developed or developing, remains dominated by money power which, in case of developing countries, is also compounded by muscle power and primordial norms. The economic process in general operates through cutthroat competition, speculation and black money. The unscrupulous norms constitute the common behavioral forms everywhere today. In almost every country, the legislators enjoy certain immunity from common laws under the law providing special parliamentary privileges. In the developing countries, the politicians, especially those belonging to the ruling party, stand above law. Nowhere the judiciary is accountable to the people. The universally prevailing contempt of court law empowers it to silence every critic. The official secrets law, existing in nearly all countries, authorizes the bureaucracy to cover up all deals and rule roughshod over the people. The law enforcement agencies enjoy wide-ranging powers the world over. In the Third World, they behave as law unto themselves. At every place the law favors the capital-owning and the property-possessing classes and is biased against the poor and the deprived. It is a world where politics, black money and yes-boss culture have become the most profitable professions and the self-seekers, liars and deceivers the most successful performers. Every authoritative human fora, whether international or national, is guided by the parameters of the prevailing unfair and unjust social order. The second reason that constrains our attitude towards attending the serious threats faced by humankind is the prevalent national approach, being now more aggressively pursued by each national government and mainstream party, which conflicts with the supranational plans concerning common human issues, like environment, population, poverty, social justice, minority rights, etc. The national priorities logically clash with the core items of the human agenda. The third reason that hampers our attitude towards meeting the common challenges to mankind is our approach towards social development, which, with its consumerist orientation, misuses and abuses both the material and the human resources by its unfair and unjust international and national order under which a few rich countries and a few rich people in each country appropriate the lion's share of the world's natural resources and dominate the human resources. The fourth reason that hinders our attitude towards tackling the disharmonies between society and nature is our human-centric approach, which tries to advance human interests at the cost of non-human phenomena, thus causing damage to environment and harming the strategic human interests. Our option: how do we brace up to meet the problem of disharmonies within human society and between the latter and nature? The logical answer is that by creating harmony within and between the concerned processes. Harmony at every place and time is, and can be, achieved by balancing the interests of the factors involved in any process. In order to balance the interests of various social groups in human society, on the one hand, and of human society and nature, on the other, we need to replace the existing anti-poor, anti-common people and anti-nature structure by a poor and common people friendly, both at the international and the national levels, and a nature-friendly model through various reforms. For reforming the international order, to accept the vision of a single human community and the approach of rational humanism for sorting out social problem. B. To restructure the UN on a fully democratic basis. C. To resolve all regional disputes between countries through peaceful negotiations, either bilaterally or with the UN help. D. To initiate the process for the complete banning of all nuclear arms and other deadly weapons under the UN control. E. To settle all civil conflicts in different countries through dialogue, with an obligation on the part of each country to provide full information to the UN. F. To observe all the UN covenants, such as concerning human rights, environment, gender equality, population, minorities, poverty eradication, social cohesion, etc. For reforming the national system. To rationalize the constitution and law by ending all biases in favor of elite classes. B. To federalize the state structure. C. To decentralize power at all levels and empower the people with regard to policy framing and implementing. D. To repeal all undemocratic laws, such as Official Secrets Act, Contempt of Courts Act, special privileges to legislators, army powers for a court-martial trial, detention acts, etc. E. To reform the law enforcement and law interpreting agencies to providing speedier and genuine justice to the people. F. To reform the electoral law with a view to ending the role of money and muscle power and other undemocratic practices. G. To adopt the Freedom of Information Act. H. To manage all types of media through an autonomous and democratic agency. I. To reorganize the administration, reform the jail manual and abolish the capital punishment. J. To develop the human resources by providing rights to poverty alleviation, work, need-based living wage, housing, maintenance in old age and also in case of complete or partial disability. Universal elementary education, primary health care, 35-hour work week, weaker sections, especially the women, gender equality, prohibition of child labor, special attention to mother and child care, etc. K. To develop the material resources by globalizing the economy through a proper mix-up of market and state interventions. L. To organize regional defense system. M. To cultivate rational thinking, democratic behavior and sustainable lifestyle. N. To manage the population problem through the empowering of women, democratizing of society, conserving of environment and adopting of sustainable development and lifestyle. For improving and protecting environment. To create awareness among the masses about the problem of conserving environment and adopting sustainable development and lifestyle. B. To ensure the implementation of Agenda 21, adopted at the Rio Earth Summit, under the supervision of the UNCED, and set up a high-power UN Sustainable Development Council to act as a global authority for the development of natural and human resources by enacting fundamental economic reforms in regard to environment and development, such as codes for MNCs, currency exchanges and stock markets, forests, natural resources, pollution, etc., and monitor their implementation. No fair and just society can arise anywhere today if the concerned people remain unaware of the need for such a society. A fair and just society is, and can be, the product of people's consciousness alone and not of any constitution or institution. No law, court, party or press can create or save a fair and just society if there is no fairness or justice in people's hearts and minds.